Today, we're going to hear the story of Oscar. And as you can notice, in Yo Digo No Más, we are having more men breaking the silence and telling their story.
I was taken advantage of by a cousin of mine.
It is so hard for men to break the silence.
It affects your connection with the individual, and it's even worse when you don't share. But I realized the love that I have for her and what we have for each other, and I knew I can trust her with it.
When our brains and our bodies suffer traumatic events, our brains do everything they can to keep us safe. Like if you've been sexually abused, it does not mean that you are gay. Sexual abuse affects all relationships, can affect all relationships, especially with your intimate partner, with your wife.
The subconscious is affecting you. Trust me. You're being driven by your trauma, and it is extremely important to deal with it.
Speak up, scream, shout, tell, no matter what somebody says. To threaten you to say, don't say anything, that has no weight. They need to speak up.
My name is Maria Trusa, and I, like many of you, I'm a survivor of sexual abuse at the age of 9. But today, I am sitting here, telling my story and rewriting. Today, we say no more. In the inspirational session of our show, we have another story, the story of Oscar. I have to say that I know that it is extremely hard to break the silence and tell your story. But when you're ready, you're ready. Welcome, Oscar.
Thank you for having me.
I want to thank you from the team of Yo Digo No Más and everyone out there that is watching the show. Oscar, tell us a little bit about you. Who is Oscar?
I am an IT professional. I work for the city of New York. I also have developed through what I've been through my passion project, which is the podcast of FYI, I Am Damaged. It's one of the reasons that will help define who I am, what I've been through, what I can leave for my children to understand better who their father was and why their father was.
Well, I can tell you that for us, it is extremely important to bring men because, as you know, it is so hard for men to break the silence. There is a stigma that we talk about, that when you're raped, when you go through that experience, that it sort of damages men, but in a different way, that is almost like you have to keep that secret for life. Right. And the men and the women, because this happens to anyone, but I think men by nature, they have a harder time speaking their feelings. So when we hear that a man wants to share the story for us, we get very excited. And I ask this question to everyone: what happened to you?
Well, what happened to me, I was really hoping and thinking back that it was just a one time, but I was taken advantage of by a cousin of mine. That was my first experience. And it was in such a way that I don't know if it happened more than once because of what a person does to themselves to not want to remember, push it down. And it's even, no, I don't want to even say that it's worse for men. It's in a different way for a male child to deal with those feelings and reconcile what happened to you. So I don't even know if it happened more than once, because I may have basically damaged myself in a way to block that I don't even want to think of this. But going forward, living my life, it became something that I thought of literally every day.
The wounds are deep, very deep, and it would take forever to heal, but we heal. We just are always going to remember it. And there are times when we remember it that it hurts a little, but we don't have to stay stuck. And I know you haven't, that you have done a lot of great things and you have a beautiful family. But I am interested in finding out, when this happened, did you tell anyone?
No, there is no template, there is no format, there isn't anything, especially when it comes to young boys, and it becomes a sort of selfishness. And the person who's actually assaulted gets lost in that selfishness not because the person's willfully selfishness to ignore what the person went through, but that they have to deal with something else that's crushing them throughout their daily lives.
The fact is that taking that innocence, that break in the innocence, is something that destroys us to another level. And unfortunately, there are millions of people out there that do not get over it. When it comes to your sexuality as with your wife, like, do you feel this affected you, or were you able to speak with her? How long did it take you to speak with her?
It affects your connection with the individual, and it's even worse when you don't share. But I realized the love that I have for her and what we have for each other, and I knew I can trust her with it. So it wasn't something hidden until it was too much to bear and it needed to be told. I let her know what happened, and she was able to share with me things that has gone on that affected her, and it was a good experience, and it was one of the best things I've did with entrusting that part of me with her.
Did you ever tell your mom?
No, because she's my mom. She's not always going to see me as an adult because I'm her son. Yeah. I'm her only boy. I'm the youngest. And in Spanish culture, that's pedestal big, and she has to reach a certain point where, who knows, maybe she never wants to discuss it because it brings up, what she's been through. So then she has to reconcile her feelings. And then I have to wait for her.
It's an interesting concept, right? Because there could be two ways that we can look at this. Sometimes we feel that if we don't talk about it, it's not affecting us. That somehow it's like we put it to the side, we put it behind, we don't even see it, and it's not driving us. But unfortunately, it is driving us. And I know what you're saying because your mom is older, obviously, and it's a different generation. And I think for this generation, it is really hard to address this. I think we are breaking those barriers, which is critical that we do, because this is the only way we're going to stop the silent pandemic of sexual abuse. We're feeding the pandemic with the silence. Because I'm assuming, I shouldn't say I know, but I'm assuming that your cousin did this to other boys.
I wouldn't be surprised. But I took a little step of letting my sister know, because she lives out there. He's in California. And I found out, he has a family of his own. He has children of his own. I don't even know if he's doing this to his children. I don't know. And I will never assume, but I pray that it's not that. But I warned my sister. I told her, I let her know. She's the closest person to me, family-wise, that I let know what happened to me. And sad thing about it was, after that, I didn't hear anything from her.
From your sister?
Nothing. Which hurt within and of itself, because you basically opened up the biggest chapter, one of the biggest wounds that somebody can go through, to make sure that they're protected. And then our communication kind of, and I don't know what's going on in her life. She's on the other side of the country. She could be busy. She could be hypervigilant of her children. And I just got pushed to the back because she's focusing on that. I don't know. I rather think of the positive rather than her maybe dismissing me, maybe believing him rather than me. I don't know. Yeah. But I'm a person that thinks of all angles. So I can't discount that, but I want to focus on the positive.
Well, you did what you needed to do. And you're at peace with that, I could tell. But it does hurt, that the family doesn't support you. But I know there's a lot to learn from your story. And I want to ask you, what was that moment that you said, you know what? I know this is affecting me. I'm going to start healing. Can you talk about that?
I was doing some things, running some errands, and dropping off a few things. And one of the places I was dropping something off was the actual building in the Bronx where it happened. And it was the same building, on the same floor, just not the same apartment. But I'm there at the apartment I'm running my errands with, and I'm just looking. I'm looking at the apartment door of where they lived, of where I stayed, of where I had my sleepovers, of where this happened, where my assault happened. Because I want to say what it is. A lot of people allude to it, but no, I want to say what it is. I was sexually assaulted. And I cannot get my eyes off of that apartment door. Other times where I would address this and talk about it and delve into it to deal with it, it would emotionally impact me. And I would be a wreck, I would cry, I would work my emotions. And luckily, now my wife was there talking. She would be there for those moments. In this moment, I didn't feel that. Not at all. It was just a calm. It was a calm, and I was sending her some messages, some voice messages. I said, look, I'm here. I'm dealing with this, and I feel okay about it. For some reason, I don't know what. Maybe it's been the decades of dealing with this. Like, I feel better. I feel calmer. I feel I'm able to deal with this as a rational person should deal with something that impacted their life forever. And there's not much she could say. She's just, okay, I'm glad you feel that way. You need to talk. I'm here. As with any person helping somebody through that, just be there. Just be there. You don't have to say, you don't have to figure it out for them. You don't have to have a inspirational saying. No, just make sure, at the minimum, mouth shut, ears open, and let that person express. Let that person talk. Let that person get everything off, because this is something very weighty that they dealt with.
Oscar, what would be a message that you would send to a child that is going through what you've gone through?
Speak up, scream, shout, tell. No matter what somebody says, to threaten you to say, don't say anything, that has no weight. They need to speak up. And this is one of the platforms to get that message out, to just put that little itch in the back of their head that if something happened, speak. If something might happen, know that you can speak. And hopefully this also makes parents aware, pay extra attention to what your kids are doing, who they're doing it with, who they're with, the mannerisms of people where this can kind of tell that, you know what, my children need to be supervised when they're around certain individuals, because there can be telltale signs, and I don't want to say which sign. It can be anything. Somebody might not even have those signs, but when it's children, we don't play. When it's my children, I don't play. My wife knows. It's like, are you okay with this? When it's with my kids, trust me, there's only going to be one person standing, and it's going to be me when it comes to my kids.
You'll make sure that what happened to you doesn't happen to them.
Absolutely. Or to anybody else. Anybody else, whether it's informative or through action. It shouldn't happen to anybody else.
Speak out. Tell. Scream. Whatever you need to do. This is not your fault. This is not you doing anything wrong. This is someone taking advantage of you and destroying your innocence. But you can speak out, not just for you. Do it for everyone else that is being sexually abused. Oscar, what an honor. Thank you so much for pouring your heart, pouring your soul with us today in Yo Digo No Más.
I appreciate you giving me the platform.
You now become family of Yo Digo No Más, and together you and I will say no more.
No more.
In the expert segment of our talk show, Yo Digo No Más, we welcome back our expert, Dr. Kimberly Alba. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be here again.
I am really excited to have Dr. Alba with us, talking about addressing some of the points that we got to see in the interview with Oscar. And there was so many different gifts, that I call them, that he gave us, where we can dig in a little deeper. And I want to talk to you about something that he addressed, which was that there are parts of the story that he doesn't remember, that he felt that he was sexually abused more times, but he just didn't remember it. This is something that happens to a lot of people, right?
Absolutely. So when our brains and our bodies suffer traumatic events, our brains do everything they can to keep us safe. And so many times we dissociate, which means we shut off our brain and our memory, and we allow ourselves to experience something without feeling it. And that can later lead into lapses in memory or recalling the events.
It's like they have a feeling, but they don't know what it is. And what are some of the work that you do with, because I know that you take care of a lot of people. You specialize more in children and adolescents, but you do see adults too. Right. What is some of the work that you do with the sexually abused?
So this question comes up so much. What do I do when there's a blockage, right? And I often process with kids, adults, adolescents, what it's like to not remember, and really sit with that emotion, that fear, that confusion, that feeling that you mentioned, and we work through that. And many times we write narratives of these traumatic experiences to process those emotions and those thoughts related to the trauma. And we'll have trauma chapters where they'll remember what happened, and we'll have some where we just we don't remember this part, and that's okay, and this is how I feel about that, and this is what I think about that. And so it's okay to have those blockages. Remember that those memories could come back, and if they do, that's then something for you to talk about in your therapy. And if they don't, then that's okay as well. It's really, the work is not so much in the content of the trauma, but more in how we feel about what happened.
That is why it's important to do therapy. Because even if parts of the story you don't remember, but the parts that you do remember, to be able to process it, I mean, the power of writing, there's so much good in it. And one of the concerns that I always say that I have is when people don't address their trauma, they will sedate in different ways. What are some of the ways that people sedate?
Absolutely. So people often sedate, whether it literally be with substances, it could be using activities or work, even sometimes.
Workaholic.
Right? Or being overly productive to avoid your emotions. It can even be sedating in the same thing that caused your trauma, right? Sexual activity, having multiple sexual partners. So there are various ways that sedation takes place to avoid, right? Our brains do everything they can to keep you safe. It's just those coping skills are maladaptive and they're not safe coping skills. And that's why trauma processing is incredibly important, so that you learn how to sit with the emotion that comes with having a traumatic history, and you learn how to accept, and you learn how to develop more adaptive coping skills.
What are some of the therapy that is out there? Because it's very complex. I mean, there are so many different therapy that exist in that we get confused. I mean, I'm somebody in the field of healthcare and have dealt with mental health. And I realize that even for me, it's difficult to really comprehend all the different ways. Can you give us a little summary of the different trauma therapy?
So I think what's most important here is finding a therapist that is trauma-informed or who has trauma-informed certifications. And I could sit here and go through the list of them, but that wouldn't be too helpful. But just being mindful that while you're doing your exploration for a therapist, you ask what their trauma-informed certifications are. If they've worked with patients who've suffered from traumatic experiences like your own, and maybe you ask them specific questions around that. You also would like to look for a therapist who does a lot of integrative body-based processing, because when you suffer from a sexual abuse in particular, or even physical abuse, there's so much that the body keeps the score on. And so movement therapies are really helpful, or therapies that really integrate how you're thinking, feeling, physically, and emotionally. So I just really recommend that you ask the providers that you're looking for, are you trauma informed? What trauma specialties do you have? And have you had patients with a similar story to mine?
Because we can heal. And that is something that in Yo Digo No Más, we want to make sure that you get, that you can heal. There are many different ways that you can process your trauma. But the most important thing is that you start realizing that there is something that you need to process and that you need to start the healing process. I also want to address the fact that we had another man come to our show. I was telling Oscar, I said it was exciting to have him there. Not in an exciting way like we have another story, but it's more that men are coming out and speaking out in Yo Digo No Más. It's like almost 30%. It's men that are coming out. So it is important because there is so much work to be done with the men, because there is a whole history. Can we go over that?
Of course. I mean, in our society, there's so many biases around toxic masculinity that really affect men in the way that they speak about their emotions, and especially if they've been a survivor of sexual abuse. And so men from a young age are taught to toughen up. Right?
Don't cry. Men don't cry.
How many times is that said in our family, right? And so men don't express their emotionality, and then you have this piece of sexuality where men are thought to be very hypersexual in our society and have various partners, right? And demonstrate their masculinity in that way. And when you've been sexually abused, it almost goes against that, right? And it's very dissonant for men to feel that. And so you have this society that creates a very, very difficult space for men to come out and say, I've been sexually abused. Add on the layer of this fear of being portrayed as gay. Men are so scared of that too, right? And that's such a myth, right? Like if you've been sexually abused, it does not mean that you're gay. And it's an incredibly big myth, and men have to battle that then. What if I come out and then that's what's labeled onto me, right? So we don't provide enough space for men in general about emotionality, but specifically about this. And so it's very, very promising to hear that 30% of the survivors for Yo Digo No Mas are men, because right now the statistics show that 1 in 6 boys are sexually abused before the age of 16. And that's with all the underreporting that happens.
Right, because those are the ones that get reported. Because millions of them do not get reported. And we get to see it here at Yo Digo No Mas, because I think maybe 1 or 2 cases were reported. It's sad to see those statistics, but they're a reality that we have to deal with. And that is why we're changing that. I was able to ask him about how this affected his relationship with his wife. And one of I think for him, that one of the healing that happened was that he said, I trusted my wife. She was the first person that I trusted, that I could tell her what happened to me. And that's the importance of speaking out, right? Not keeping this to yourself.
Right, sharing the space with someone and being able to process how it's then affecting your relationship with them, because sexual abuse affects all relationships, can affect all relationships, especially with your intimate partner, with your wife. So it's so incredible that he was able to take that brave step, be able to talk about it and come over those issues that he was having.
Yeah. Thank you again for coming back to our talk show, and for all the work that you do with Yo Digo No Mas. You are a blessing to us, and many of you without even knowing. Thank you, Dr. Alba. Together, we join to say no more. It happened, but it doesn't affect me. That is the reflection of the day. I hear this over and over again. Many of the people that go through trauma, including myself, feel that if we don't talk about it, if we don't think about it, it doesn't exist. It's not driving us. The subconscious is affecting you. Trust me, you're being driven by your trauma, and it is extremely important to deal with it. You could start, many of you that feel I don't have the means to be able to get help with a psychologist, you could start by reading a book, reading or listening to a podcast, or getting a therapist if you can. Many of the stories, I hear that it happened, but I don't really think about it, so it doesn't really drive me. It is driving you. It is extremely important to deal with your trauma. Sometimes we have the tendency, and we saw it in this episode with Oscar, that you could have the tendency of thinking that something happened, but it becomes almost like a movie, almost like a dream. And that dream comes over and over, and you try to prevent from really confronting it. Because if you confront it, then you have to confront your trauma, and you have to feel the pain. We need to heal. We need to feel. Feeling gives you the ability to be able to start healing. Many people sedate. They sedate by becoming alcoholics, by becoming workaholics, by separating themselves from society, from their families, by working out too much, by eating disorders. because you're not dealing with your trauma. So today I am inviting you to feel it, to speak it, and start the healing process and say no more. We have come to the end of our show. Every show feels so special to me. I want to thank Oscar for bearing his soul and sharing his story. I want to thank Louis Capelli for giving us the space to create magic. I want to thank our sponsor, ENT and Allergy Associates, LLP. Thank you for supporting our mission, our production team. And lastly, I want to thank you for giving us the time to watch our show. How do you support this movement, you may ask? I'm going to tell you how. You can donate by going into our website. You're going to see that on the bottom. You can tell your story with us. You can buy products that are going to support the movement. Go into our website. You can buy my book, Yo Digo No Más. 100% of the proceeds will go into the movement. Thank you for supporting us and uniting with us to say no more.